Hello my loves. You've been here a while, you will know I love vampires. I have always loved them. They are my number one favourite supernatural creature. I wanted to just have a full month of just reading vampire novels, and it doesn't really fit the time of year. It is boiling in the UK at the moment, very, very humid, has been for the past few weeks, feels like summer's already here. I mean, in my opinion, there's no correct season for vampires. It's the best time all the time. I have done this before. I think it was about a year ago. I don't know if it was in May, I can't remember. Maybe May is just vampire month for me. I just felt like it had been a while. I'd stacked up quite a few that I was setting aside when I could just dedicate a whole month to reading a load of vampire books. Even with me reading all of these, there's still quite a few that I didn't get around to. I'm sure I will do another one of these at some point. So if you have any good vampire recommendations for me, there's still some from the last time I did it that I haven't got around to. I've already got a list brewing again, but if there's any you really liked and you think that I would like, please do recommend them for me so I can start amassing my list for, I guess, next year when I do this again. I'm just gonna get straight into it because I think I have like 10 books to talk about. Some of them I have significantly more to say about than others, but this might be a long one, so get yourself a drink, get settled in. We are gonna go from worst, in my opinion, like lowest rated, to highest rated, so we can end on a good note. So the first book, and also the first one I read this month, is Immortal Dark by Tigrest Girma. I unfortunately rated this 2 stars. Let's talk about why. It was marketed as being dark academia vampires, which right up my street, you would think, right? Love dark academia, love vampires. It essentially follows a girl named Kidan whose sister has gone missing. She's convinced she knows what happens. She thinks a vampire has taken her, and she's intent basically on finding her sister. That's kind of the plot of the story. And what ends up happening is she ends up going to this like elite school or university for, I don't quite remember the politics of it. It's like the way vampires are in this world is there's select families that they will be assigned to and they will be allowed to feed from, and that's how like the vampires are controlled. They're not just hurting everyone, they're only allowed to feed from the people from these like direct bloodlines, and they're assigned to certain households. I'm pretty sure that's how it works anyway. Kidan is from one of these bloodlines, so she was kind of due to inherit this house anyway and go and live there and I can't remember what they're called, become the person that was assigned to these vampires, right? This is her opportunity to go because she thinks one of the vampires who is there is the one who took her sister. She goes, she has to study, but she's also trying to track her down. I honestly don't really have a huge amount of good to say about this book, unfortunately. I just really was not a fan. I don't think it should have been marketed as dark academia because there is very little academia in it. It's not dark academia, right? But even as like a vampire, almost like, I was gonna say murder mystery, it's not murder mystery because she doesn't think her sister's dead, but that kind of thing, I was just not invested. I think the characters, in my opinion, weren't great. Kidan, especially as a character, felt incredibly muddled to me. She was supposed to be this like really strong, scrappy character, and sometimes she came across like that, sometimes she just really didn't. It was almost like a bit confusing trying to work out who she actually was, what her morals were, what her motivations were, because they just seemed to like change quite a lot. The other characters honestly weren't really memorable, really. The vampire dude, Susinyos, I think his name was. I didn't really care for him. He was supposed to be like mysterious. He's the guy who she thinks has killed or has taken her sister. He just didn't really give a lot. He didn't really say a lot. And I think one of my biggest problems with this, and I genuinely just thought I was being stupid, a lot of the conversations in this book just don't make sense. You know, sometimes you'll read and you'll be like, oh, people would never talk like that. There is that, but that's not what I mean. It's genuinely what they're saying doesn't make sense. Like, someone will say something and then the response to it has such little relevance or doesn't answer that. Just the words themselves don't make sense. And I thought I was being really stupid and like I just couldn't understand what was being hinted at. But I saw a lot of other reviews saying the same thing. So I think just the dialogue wasn't very good. I'm thinking about when I read The Secret History and I was like, I don't understand what you guys are talking about, but that is because I don't understand classics and shit like that. It felt like it was trying to be like that, but it just didn't work. Actually, what they were saying just did not make sense. There was too many riddles. They were trying to be clever, but it didn't really work. It was that kind of feeling. The plot didn't really make a lot of sense either. Honestly, I had no idea what was going on for most of this book. For like the first, I don't know, like maybe 20%, not really much happens. You're just getting settled, that's fine. And then when things do start happening, it's It's quite convoluted. There's a lot of people to keep track of. I distinctly remember there was this one part, Kidan and Susanyo's were having a conversation, which was just one of there's so many riddles, I don't understand what either of you are saying to each other conversation. Kidan just went, it all makes sense now. And I was just sat there like, no, it doesn't. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what the plot here is. I just don't understand. It was very muddled, a little bit convoluted. There were times when the writing was just not great, in my opinion. I think there is going to be a second book to this, right? I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember what happened at the end, but I think there's going to be a second book. I will not be reading it. I really don't care. Wouldn't be my first recommendation for a good vampire book. The next book is The Last Raven by Helen Glynn Jones. This is like more romantasy with vampires. I unfortunately also rated this 2 stars. The Last Raven is kind of your typical, right? Girl, I think I don't remember how old she was. She was maybe a teenager, maybe 18, 19. I also do not remember her name. It was Amelia. That was her name. She is born into, not royal, what's the word? Like this noble vampire family. So in this world, it seemed like almost like different kingdoms or different factions that were ruled by different vampire families. She's the daughter, right? So she's supposed to be the next in line, the heir to the throne of these 2 very important vampires of this kingdom. But she's human. She was somehow born a human, even though they're both vampires. And this is like really rare for this to happen. She's basically been sheltered her whole life because her parents are scared that she'll get hurt by the other vampires or she'll be seen as weak and they might like hurt her or whatever. But they don't have any other children, so she's their only heir. Basically, she's not happy with this setup. She doesn't want to be the next Raven. She doesn't want to take the throne and rule. She's fed up of being treated the way she is. She just wants to leave. She wants to get out and go live a normal human life. And there are like parts of the kingdom which are like safe places for humans where vampires just like won't feed on them. So she wants to escape and go live there. I would say about 50% of this book is just Amelia's inner monologue of her being like, I'm only human, I'm so weak, I'm so different to everyone else, that's why I need to leave. Just variations of that over and over again, which was quite frustrating, honestly. There was a Goodreads review, actually. I'm gonna find it. I didn't read the whole thing just in case it spoiled it, because I found out at the beginning of reading it, but I remember it being really funny, and I think it might sum up how I felt about most of this book. Okay, this is from Goodreads user Brand, and they gave it 1 star. This is how the first half of this book felt. I wake up and throw my hair up in a messy bun before running downstairs. My parents are the rulers of the vampire kingdom, but I'm not like other heirs. I'm only alive because my mother stopped my father from killing me. My name is YN, and I'm a human. I'm not going to read this whole review. I would recommend going to read that review. It's like one of the first ones that pops up on Goodreads. I will be honest, it did feel like that a little bit. She's just constantly complaining about how frail, whatever she is, which fair enough, yeah, you're a human in a world of vampires, but I don't need to hear it 50 times. I don't need to keep hearing about how, oh, I just need to leave. Just leave. Let's move it along a bit. You know? And then she gets assigned this new bodyguard. She just hates him for no reason. But he's also really attractive, of course. And it's just, so it's like pretty standard setup there for a romantasy, right? Here were kind of my problems. I can kind of forgive Amelia in this for being kind of an idiot because it fits with her character. She's been sheltered from the world her entire life. She doesn't really understand or have a lot of experience. She's quite naive. And normally that would annoy me, but it makes sense for her character. A lot of the other times when that happens in romantasy, it doesn't really make sense for the character. They're just stupid for no reason and miss really obvious red flags. For her, I can kind of understand it, right? That was fine. However, the romance in this, there was absolutely no chemistry whatsoever. It made no sense. Again, while I can forgive her for not knowing that because she doesn't really have much experience with people other than her parents and the people, like the servants in the house, that doesn't mean I'm gonna immediately love it and like actually care about it. There was no meaningful setup. Their interactions didn't even feel like there was much chemistry. It was very obvious, I think, what was then going to happen in the plot as well. It was very predictable and I wasn't particularly invested in either the characters or I was somewhat interested in the plot. I will say I think it grew on me towards the end, which is why I think it was slightly better than Immortal Dark. The vampires themselves were okay. Like, I don't really remember there being any particular, like, powers or anything mentioned. It was just kind of like your standard expected vampires, so it didn't really need much explaining in terms of, like, a magic system or anything. It wasn't the worst I've ever read. I just was a bit frustrated at times and wasn't hugely invested. However, there was enough of the plot and enough that I think I probably will read the next one, because I'm pretty sure this is, I don't know if this is going to be a duology or a trilogy, I can't remember. I might recommend it if you like romantasy and you want some vampires. Quite easy to read. I read it very quickly. Just not anything amazing or like groundbreaking, you know? The next book was So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This is more like thrillery. I think it was described as a romantic comedy, actually. I'm not sure that I would agree. This I rated 2.5 stars, by the way, so we're getting slightly better. I do not remember the main character's name. I have no recollection of what it was. I only finished it yesterday, so it didn't leave that much of an impact on me. She's in her 30s. She's kind of just settled into a routine with her job that is kind of meh. Her husband, who she knows has had several affairs, and she's just kind of ignoring it. She doesn't take a lot of risks. She just wants to remain safe. And then we've got her a best friend called Naomi. I don't remember her name. And she's just like the complete opposite. She's in a relationship with a dude in a band, and she's just like traveling everywhere. She's very impulsive, more risky. The complete opposite of our main character, but they're best friends and they've known each other since school. Main character's birthday, they go away together and they somehow find themselves amongst this group of people who may or may not be vampires, and they accidentally get like, you know, involved in it. I would say this is more like realizing your life sucks and having it forcibly changed, so you have to come to terms with that. That's not a genre, but I'm not sure that I would say it's romantic comedy. I think this had the potential to be better than it was. I don't think it was awful. I don't think it was great, but I don't think it was awful. The pace it felt relatively fast, but might again just be because I read it quite quickly. But even though it was quite fast, it felt like we still didn't really get into things properly at any point. It didn't really feel like we got too deep into any particular characters. It felt like there was a lot of stuff about the characters and general development that could have happened that just wasn't there, which I think was quite disappointing, because there was potential for a lot of these characters to be really good. There was like the whole group of vampires. It seemed like they could have been a really interesting group, like kind of like What We Do in the Shadows. They just kind of all go around together, live together, kind of act like a little dysfunctional family kind of thing, but we didn't really see much of that, which was disappointing because I think that could have been fun. It was more focused on main character realizing that she's been like, you know, just settling, repressing the things she wants and coming to terms with that and moving forward. It was more a story focused on things like that, which to an extent I think it did it okay, but I think the part where she was just very, very in denial about all of that dragged on far too long. We are very much in the main character's head, but her head is just, what if? But what if? But what if? Long paragraphs of her basically just worrying, trying to come up with all of these different possibilities and solutions. And for a while it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is her character, this is how her brain works, that's fine. But it was actually quite annoying after a while, because it didn't really feel like it moved things along. It felt like it was actually just delaying things happening, because we had to read like a whole page of her catastrophizing about things. The worst part of this book, genuinely, for me, was her best friend. Naomi was a terrible friend, absolutely awful friend. She was selfish. She did not care about main character, no matter how much she said she did. She was just awful, but the main character just couldn't see that. And I was like, is this going to be part of the of the development, that you realize Naomi is actually not a good friend? No. None of that was not included. That might just be my opinion. Some people might think she was a great friend. I think she was awful, and I don't think they should be friends anymore. There is obviously romance in this. My issue with that again was that there was no chemistry. It had the potential to be really interesting, really promising. It was like we spent too much of the book on main character worrying about things, and then we get to her realizing things, and there's like, you know, decisions made, and that's like the last 3% of the book, and then suddenly it's like, oh, well, I don't really know what happened there then. And a lot of that is with the romance too, so I don't really know how it could be called a romantic comedy. I don't know, I feel like it wasn't developed well enough. You know, I don't really have much more to say about this book. It didn't really leave me with anything. It was just meh. And moving up to the 3 stars, we have Pyramidia by Stephanie Sanders Jacob. This got recommended to me on TikTok. Don't often take book recommendations from TikTok anymore, but this one sounded interesting. And do you know what? It was decent. It wasn't great, but it was decent. So this is like, what if you got sucked into an MLM, multi-level marketing scheme, that sells tea, but all of the consultants who sell tea are actually vampires. The main character, Harriet, she wants for some reason to move to a really small town and just like have a complete break from her previous life. We never find out why, but she moves into this house in like the middle of nowhere. It's like a little cabin in the woods, and there's just all of these multi-level marketing schemes in this small town. There's someone who's selling really ugly clothes, but no one wants to buy from her, and then there's these other ladies who are selling this tea. It's called Serenity. So it's like a wellness experience lifestyle kind of MLM, and they're all super beautiful. They all wear white all the time. They're all super chill and calm. She tries some of the tea and like her whole life changes, and she gets like sucked into this vampire pyramid scheme. A few years ago, I was like fully in the fuck MLMs, like watching all of these videos about MLMs being exposed and like deep dives into different ones. I'm not so much in that anymore. I still think they're absolutely awful. As a business model, they're incredibly predatory and take advantage of certain demographics. So that hasn't changed. I'm just not quite as obsessed with the consuming content about them. I thought this sounded like an interesting concept, and do you know what? It was pretty interesting. It was kind of bizarre and quite surreal. Our main character, Harriet, has literally no personality, by the way. I could not tell you a single thing about her. Any character traits that she has, I don't know. She wasn't really developed very well. None of the characters were particularly developed, but it was one of those books where it was kind of like, there was funny elements, there were bits where you're like, what the hell is going on? Yeah, it was a bit surreal. There were certain things that had just never resolved. Like, a significant part of this as well is that like her house is haunted. That never gets resolved. We never find out what's going on there, which is a bit frustrating, because it was a considerable part of the book for some reason, even though it didn't really link to anything else, seemingly. So there were like certain parts there that just, like with that and the characters that weren't developed very well, just the weirdness of what was going on, and wanting to find out like who these women are they vampires, are they not, what's in this tea because it's not FDA approved. It was not serious, it was kind of silly, a not too serious criticism of MLM, specifically the whole wellness culture of it. Yeah, it was just kind of alright. I mean, I'd recommend it if you want something that's not too serious, very easy to read, if you hate MLMs and like vampires. You know, I don't know that I would flock to recommend it. One of those books you're like, yeah, that was okay. I don't really know what else to say about it, I'm sorry. Next, we have Masters of Death by Olivie Blake. Olivie Blake seems to have become my top read author this year. I think she's gonna stay at the top because I have more of her books that I want to read. And do you know what? I had a good time with this. I'm a bit on the fence of whether I would rate this 3.5 or 4 stars. It was good. Yeah, I still can't quite work out how I feel about it. Masters of Death is not really a vampire book. There is a vampire in it, one of the main characters, because there's several main characters, but this is more about like a collection of people who, all of them are different supernatural creatures. So we've got the vampire, we've got like a siren, we've got ghosts, we've got Death's son, godson. He's not actually related to Death, but Death like looks after him. We've got a demon, we've got some angels, we've got some reapers. There's just a whole collection of different like supernatural people that all end up coming together because our main vampire character, Viola, she is a real estate agent. She needs to sell this house, but there's a ghost stuck in it. She goes to someone who is advertised as being a medium named Fox, and Fox is the godson of Death. death, and he ends up roping in all his other supernatural friends. It all gets a bit out of hand, really. Death's missing. They need to find him. There's this other guy who's involved. He's maybe an angel or he's maybe a demon. I don't really remember. Here's the thing I've learned about Olivie Blake. So I've read, I think, 4 of her books this year now. I'm gonna be confused in every single one of her books. The big thing in this, right, is that there's this game that the supernatural people play in order to get death back or to like defeat this evil demon guy. They need to play this game. I did not tell you what this game is. They talk about it for a while quite elusively, quite vaguely, and I didn't understand at that point. I think for most of this book I was just like, things will eventually make sense at some point, I hope. And they kind of did, but they also really didn't. They play the game in the book. I still do not understand what this game is, how you win, how you lose, what you get if you win, or what you get if you lose. I could not tell you. I don't understand. However, even without understanding that, I still enjoyed this book because of the characters. The plot itself was kind of, nah. Yeah, I didn't understand some of it, but I understood enough of it that it was okay. The characters themselves were what carried it. Tom, the ghost, my favourite. Absolutely loved him. He was wonderful. Viola was fine. You start with Viola and you assume she's going to be the main character, but she kind of stops being the main character at some point in it, which was kind of disappointing because she's the vampire. The thing I like about Olivie Blake is you get the backstory, you get the depth in all of these characters. Even though, yeah, she then kind of faded into the background a little bit, you still knew her, you still kind of almost got that development with her because you see how she's got to the point she's at in the book, and you get that with all of the characters. It was just a good little collection of characters. Again, almost like what I was saying with what was I saying a minute ago? What book was I talking about? With So Thirsty, where like the little collection of vampires almost felt like What We Do in the Shadows is. That is kind of what it felt like, just this group of kind of weird eccentric people coming together and just being weird and eccentric together. If you want something like that with a plot that's very confusing but you can probably kind of muddle your way through it, I would recommend. If you are not a character reader or you need complex, make sense plot, maybe not for you. Next, we have A Cruel Thirst by Angela Montoya. This I enjoyed more than I thought I was going to. I didn't think I was going to like this because I thought it was just going to be like kind of similar to The Last Raven. I actually really enjoyed this. I rated this 4 stars. We have 2 points of view in this. We have Lalo, who is a dude whose parents have been killed by vampires. He wants to avenge them, and unfortunately he gets turned into a vampire, but he doesn't want to eat people. He doesn't want to drink people's blood. He wants to try and find some way to cure himself and still avenge his parents' death by killing the original vampire who killed them and then turned him. And then on the other side, we have Carolina, who is a vampire hunter. Her entire family have been vampire hunters. It's like their thing. They're like very well respected. They've been slaying vampires for generations. It seems to be mainly in their little area, town, wherever it is, that vampires are particularly bothersome. And so the sons are always trained to continue the vampire slaying legacy. And Carolina is annoyed that she hasn't been trained in that. She's very close with her grandfather though, and he like trains her, even though her dad doesn't want her to do that. He more wants her to, like, you know, do the traditional things like get married and all of that shit. She still knows how to fight. She's still like very competent, very clever, but her father doesn't know any of this and doesn't think she would be able to do it. Of course, because Lalo is a vampire, they end up crossing paths and reluctantly working together to try and bring down vampires as a whole rather than just firefighting when there's like attacks, essentially. So because of that premise, yeah, I just assumed this was going to be like stereotypical romantasy that I don't really enjoy. I genuinely really liked this. I enjoyed that it was a standalone. I thought it was done very well, even though it wasn't hugely long. The world felt fleshed out. I understood what was going on. The politics, the like history was all really good. It felt very immersive. The characters were great as well. I really liked Lalo. His responses to things, his whole attitude I found really funny, really amusing, but also very sweet. He was like describing himself as like very insular. He's like a scholar. He just likes reading and a bit awkward. And then we have Carolina on the other side, who's like, yeah, really clever, but also very fiery. She really wants to prove herself that she can like fight, even though her father thinks she can't. And so she's very determined, very confident, very cunning in a way. They just work very well together. Their interactions were quite funny, and seeing the development between them of obviously they're gonna hate each other to begin with because he's a vampire and she's a slayer, like seeing that grow and them having to reluctantly work together was great. The plot itself as well, like the history and everything played out, connected. Obviously I won't spoil, but it was, I thought, enjoyable, satisfying enough for a standalone. Everything was wrapped up quite nicely. The vampires as well, actually, they didn't particularly really have any powers or anything. However, when they drank from people, they would like take years of their life away from them, and they would also see all of their memories when they were drinking from them. So yeah, they were interesting, slightly different, but still mostly quite traditional. Yeah, it was just good. I would recommend, definitely. Next, we have A Tempest of Tea by Hafsah Faizal. I think that's how you say their name. I'm really sorry if I did not pronounce that correctly. This was a 4.5. We're getting up there into the good books now. I really enjoyed this. I saw very mixed reviews on this in terms of it's like Six of Crows light, or like it was trying to be Six of Crows. I think that's probably why I enjoyed it. I don't think it was trying to be Six of Crows, but let's explain. We also get 2 points of view in this. We get the point of view of... Oh, do we get more? We might get more points of view, actually. I can't really remember. The two predominant ones are Arthi and Jin, who are brother and sister. Kind of. This is very found family. Arthi and Jin, both orphaned. They are older now, but they were orphaned when they were young in this city, kind of build themselves up through crime, stealing things, but also they start this tea shop where during the day normal people come in, they sell tea. At night vampires come in, they sell blood or blood infused tea. Vampires are like an established part of this world. I don't know if they're in control of things. I'm gonna be honest, there were parts of this book I was quite confused about as well. It was quite slow and then suddenly fast paced, so I may have missed certain parts in world building. Vampires are well known to be part of this world. However, their like little business of selling tea or blood to them is, I think, illegal. So there's like shady dealings going on here. They have their little base where they do that and everyone lives, and they have all their little criminals working for them. But then they get an offer of trying to steal something. Basically, they need to do a heist, okay? There's a heist, and they have to collect their little gang of people that are going to do this heist. So there's Arthi and Jin. There's also Flick, who's she's like a well-off woman. Her mum is important in the politics of the world, I think. So she's like likes dresses, she's quite, you know, socialite-y, I suppose. And there's also Matteo, who is a vampire, but no one knows he's a vampire apart from Arthur and Jin. And he is an artist, so he's very famous for his art, but no one really knows where he is, like who he is, like, or that he's a vampire. So he's very like rich, laid back, kind of non-serious kind of character. And then the other guy's name I've forgotten. I don't remember who he is. He comes from somewhere else. He's maybe a guard or something. But there's like, we have our little group of people, right? And they're gonna do this heist. So it is very Six of Crows in that sense, but there's vampires in it. And I don't really care if it was trying to be Six of Crows. I don't think it was. I don't think this feels like a rip-off. I loved this. Things you need to know about me if you don't already. Two of my favorite things of all time are vampires and Oliver Twist. So anything that involves vampires and or a little gang of criminals coming together, stealing things, just being mischievous, I'm gonna like it. That's why I love Six of Crows. It's like Fagin's gang but grown up, and this is that with vampires included. So of course I'm gonna like it. I personally really liked all of the characters in this. There were some characters I wish we'd seen more of, mainly Mateo. He seemed like he is exactly the kind of character that I would love. It seemed like he was going to be a really big part of it, but then he kind of wasn't, which was a shame. But I loved all of the other characters enough that it didn't really matter. I loved Arthi. I thought she was great. She was like very serious, but you know, basically what you need to be able to run a little criminal tea place. Very serious, keeps her emotions very guarded, kind of ruthless. I really liked her. She was great. And then Jin is, you know, got her back, whatever, but he's maybe like a little bit more laid back. Flick is kind of like, she's a bit conflicted. She doesn't know if she wants to help these people or try and get like her mom's approval. Clever, but I suppose maybe underestimated a little bit because she's, you know, very pretty, socialite there, more so to help in terms of connections kind of thing. The other guy whose name I've forgotten, he's like mysterious, stoic, quiet. No one really knows where he came from or his motivations, you know? So we have a good little collection of characters here. A lot of the book is quite slow. A lot of the book is them planning for this, discussing it, getting things ready for this, and I suppose setting up other things that are important, like the politics, different characters that are connected to this, and stuff like that. And then the actual heisting and all of that happens very quickly. It goes from being quite slow to suddenly being quite fast-paced. I was fine with that because I enjoyed the world, I enjoyed the people, but I was happy for it to start a little bit slower. When it did start to get like ramped up a little bit, I did have to reread certain parts a few times because I was a bit confused about what was going on. I don't think I'm clever enough to ever pull off a heist, so I think that's fair enough that I didn't understand what was going on. I also just loved how focused on tea it was. Like, the subtle descriptions of various different things throughout the book being somewhat related to tea, it just, like, the whole theme of it was great. Despite, you know, my accent and where I'm from, I have not drunk tea for quite a long time. I go through phases of either drinking it all the time or just never at all. Reading this book, I was like, I need a cup of tea right now. The cozy atmosphere there, despite it being like a heist book, loved it. I really, really enjoyed that and how it was like subtly weaved throughout. This book, very much, it was not subtle at all. The commentary in this book is very much on colonialism, and I think that makes it very different. Yeah, it's a heist book, but I don't think you can say every heist book is just trying to rip off Six of Crows, because heist books have been there for a long time and will continue to be there after. Six of Crows is just a very popular one, but this very much does have a commentary on colonialism, and I suppose especially the part that tea played in that. I can't remember what the company is actually called in it, but it's very obviously supposed to be the East India Trading Company. I anticipate there will be more of that and trying to dismantle that in the next book, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I would really recommend this. There were quite mixed reviews on it when I was looking afterwards, but if you like heists, you like vampires, you like more character focused books, you like tea, you'll probably like this. Next, another 4.5 is Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. I've wanted to read this book for a really, really long time. I'm so glad I finally read this. What a good book this was. So, Hungerstone is a retelling of Carmilla, one of the original or sort of very early examples of vampire literature, which I read last time I did my only reading vampires for a month. So the story of Carmilla, which is obviously what we're basing this on, is a young vampire woman comes to stay at this house because she's unwell or she's had an accident, and essentially just starts drinking from and preying on all of the other women in this small little town, including the woman she's staying with. This retelling is quite different. In the original Carmilla, I think it's I don't know how old she is. She's quite young adult, teenage maybe. No, I think she's probably young adult, with her father, if I remember correctly. And Carmilla kind of infiltrates the house. In Hungerstone, we have Lenore is 30s, maybe. I'm going to assume she's in her 30s. Victorian era. She's married. Husband's a twat. He owns like a silver works company, manufacturing company. They've not been able to have any children, which is a massive disappointment to him. Her entire focus is on making sure she's perfect all the time. She can't ever not be calm. She has to have the perfect household. She needs to be welcoming to guests. She needs to make sure their status remains as it is. She's just trying to be like the perfect wife. But there is that undercurrent of, but they haven't been able to have children. When they're going to this new house that they've bought, her job is to like get it up and running, do renovations so he can have this hunting party party that he wants to have, but there's a carriage accident and there is Carmilla, and they take her in to let her recover. No one really knows where she's from. She can't say any, like, where she was going, where she lives, who was expecting her, if there's anyone they should contact because she's been injured. And she just kind of starts dismantling things a little bit in this home. This was really, really good, and exactly the kind of classic vampire that I enjoy. The kind where you don't really see them being a vampire that much, but there's just this kind of threat, looming presence there the whole time, where character knows something's not quite right, but they can't really explain it, they don't know what's going on, and they're slowly going slightly mad. Love it. Wonderful. Setting was great. I like anything set in the Victorian era, to be fair, so perfect. The characters, I think, were developed very well, wonderfully, especially Lenore. There were parts of things that she was saying that I was like, Lenore, that's a little bit too relatable. There was a whole bit that she went on, like a whole paragraph that I don't really, I don't remember it word for word. I'm not going to recite it, but like to sum up, there was like one bit where she was like, I didn't know what to do with this emotion, so I just ignored it. And I was like, Lenore, we are one and the same. When I read Carmilla for the first time, I was expecting it to be one of my favorite things I'd ever read. My expectations were so high for it. Unfortunately, I was actually quite disappointed with Carmilla, mainly because it was so short. I wanted more of it. I wanted more depth in these characters. I wanted to live in that world a little bit longer, and Hungerstone gave me that. Yes, obviously it's a retelling, it's a slightly different story, but the way the characters were developed, the story that ended up unfolding was wonderful. Reveals, I'm not going to call them plot twists exactly, but certain reveals, things that happened along in the plot, I shocked, gasped, thoroughly invested in seeing what would happen next. The strangeness of Carmilla, I think, was done perfectly. Like, what is she gonna do next? What is her goal here? Like, what is happening? How is Lenore gonna react? How is everyone else reacting? How has no one else seen what's going on, She's not super present in terms of actually being on the page. She's not there often. Her effect, the effect of her lingers even when she's not on the page, and slowly starts to unravel things as not being quite as perfect as Lenore would like them to be in this household and in her marriage. And maybe why I didn't give this 5 stars, there were times where this dragged a little bit. I didn't think it maybe needed to be drawn out that much, but for the most part this was really enjoyable. I really liked the writing. I thought the writing was really good, actually. I thought the characters were good, the plot was great, and even though obviously I know the story of Carmilla, this did just take it to another level that I still didn't really know what was going to happen or like what the conclusion was going to be. So I was sat at the end like, are you going to do this? Is this going to happen? Like, how is this going to resolve? I was so invested. It's very much a book of looking at a woman who is trying to be perfect, trying to do everything for everyone else to please her shitty husband, and her learning how to actually put herself first a little bit more, while it obviously also being gothic vampire horror. It was just really good. And if you like the more classic vampires, and if you enjoyed Carmilla and want a little bit more of it, I would definitely recommend. I would also really recommend the audiobook. I listened entirely to this as an audiobook and I really enjoyed it. It was well narrated, so I don't really have much bad to say. It was really good. Now we get into my 2 5 stars of the month, in my opinion, the best vampire books I read this month. The first is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I do not love the name. It is far too long, the name of this book. I was not expecting to like this book because of the name. I had an idea of what it was gonna be from the name, and it wasn't that at all. It was so good. If I remember correctly, does it begin in the 70s or the 80s, I think, in southern US, can't remember what state. A group of housewives form this little book club. There's all of them are quite different, these housewives, but they just want to read like trash books and read about like true crime and stuff like that their husbands wouldn't approve of. Meanwhile, this mysterious man moves in into this very small town where everyone knows each other, and weird things start happening. Children start going missing, but no one cares because they're in the less well-off neighborhood. All of the kids that go missing are black, so no one's really paying attention to it. Main character, whose name I've forgotten, starts to become more involved with this man and also intrigued and wondering what's going on with this man. Just certain things aren't adding up about him. I think everyone knows this, and I've given the video I've included this in. He's a vampire. But obviously it's about them finding that out, and yeah, this book club trying to do something about it. It was very much more like classic thrillery kind of feeling. You're in this small town, there's this presence, nobody knows what's going on, the presence is looming over everyone, and there's just threat, but no one's taking it seriously. Like kind of that spooky, creepy atmosphere that you get with a more like classic thriller or horror. Not scary, I was never scared at any point throughout this book, but the atmosphere was great. I saw some reviews saying like the point of view of a woman was not written very well. I didn't know until 60% of the way through this book that the author was a man. I assumed it was written by a woman. I personally think they did a very good job of writing Patricia's point of view. I'd have never known if I didn't look it up after, so I'm not sure I really agree with those reviews. That might just be me. This obviously is very much about a vampire, right? Coming into this small town, harming people, doing weird little things. But this is not just a vampire book. The vampire in this is very much like a metaphor for oppression, racism, sexism predominantly, and the true villain of every story, rich white man. And again, I think this is why it surprised me so much that it was written by a man, because it was so spot on in the, obviously I'm not a housewife in the 80s in the southern US. Just the experiences, the commentary on things was like so spot on that usually it's those kind of things that have to be written by people from those demographics to sort of have that true understanding. I think this was done phenomenally. I think this was done very well. I think it was a very good show of the, I was going to say subtle, maybe not so subtle, ways that women were and are ignored, undermined, and written off as hysterical or bored or just have too much of an active imagination when things are clearly happening or clearly wrong or something has been done to them. Similarly with the look at people not taking it seriously because it wasn't white kids that were being killed. I thought it was a very good commentary on it, and I also thought aside from that just the story was good, the writing was good, the audiobook narration was some of the best I've heard in a very long time. The narrator did such amazing voices for everyone that sounded distinct and not cheesy. It was very, very immersive. I liked that this was a return more to vampires are awful. Vampires are, this is going to really contradict something I'm going to say later. Vampires are awful, scary, inhuman murderers. I liked the more horror take on it. So you get both that and also the nice take and talk on oppression, which is fun. It was just a really good book. I really was not expecting to enjoy this as much as I did. Most of my annotations while I was reading it were just about how much I hated Patricia's husband as well. He was awful. He was absolutely awful. But again, I think a really good depiction of how quite often women can find themselves in those relationships that outwardly doesn't look awful, and it's very subtle. The little ways that men can undermine and control that no one would notice or people would just perceive as normal. I would really recommend it. I would really, really recommend it. The final book, my final 5-star that I finished yesterday, is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. This book was on a list that I did last year of like books I need to finish before the end of 2024. It slipped. I'm reading it late, but my god, did I love this book. It was so good. This did take me a while to get through. This is like 700 pages, very thin paper. The text is quite small. I read a few things while reading this because I needed to concentrate quite a lot because it is quite history heavy. Oh my god, did I enjoy every single second I spent with this book. I know this is quite a well-known vampire novel, but in case you're unfamiliar with what it's about, I thought I'd forgotten the main character's name. Apparently she doesn't have one. I swear it was mentioned at some point, but we never find out her name. She's basically telling her story, which includes her dad's story, which sounds confusing. This is like multiple stories within multiple stories. It's told from the point of view of the main character, but also through a series of letters and diary entries, and her father telling her his story. So a lot of second and third hand accounts that we get in this. It's very much a historical take on Dracula, where Dracula is the Dracula, as in Vlad the Impaler Dracula, who has somehow managed to then become a vampire and is targeting historians and leaving them these mysterious books, which then has sent multiple different historians down this rabbit hole of trying to find out more about him, who he was, and mainly where his final resting place was, because nobody knows, which then quite often would lead them to discovery that he is maybe still alive and a vampire. And so essentially we're learning her dad's journey through this and how he got sucked into that, lost a lot in his pursuit of Dracula, coming back round to the main character, who then also gets sucked up into it, and the conclusion of it. Yes, obviously we know I love vampires. I love history. History was always one of my favourite subjects at school. I love reading about the past, and there are certain areas of history that I find more interesting than others. A historian going through vampires, finding the history there, going through Eastern European history, looking at Vlad the Impaler, right up my street. This is very long, it's quite slow, there is a lot of history in this, it's quite dense. It was like it was written for me. The depiction of Dracula in this, absolutely perfect, fits amazingly with the Dracula of Bram Stoker. I have never particularly seen Dracula as a scary character or like a really serious character. I know he's supposed to be, but I've always seen him as very dramatic, theatrical, kind of a bit silly, and this was perfect for this. What do you mean? He's just leaving all of these historians this mysterious book so they'll start investigating, and then he gets annoyed when they're investigating and starts intimidating them. That's just such a silly thing to do. What are you doing, Dracula? Like, I just love that. I love that so much. I also feel like the way this was written in terms of a lot of second and third hand accounts, letters, very detailed letters and diary entries, very similar to how Dracula was presented. So I loved that too. And I liked the journey of it. We go through so many different places in Eastern Europe, not just Eastern Europe, Europe in general, actually. We go through so many different places. We learn so much. I don't actually know how much the history in this is accurate. I imagine this book took a considerable amount of research, which is very impressive. It has made me want to research more, which is great. But that adventurousness of it, where we're going to all of these different places, meeting all these different people, learning all this different history, really enjoyable. I feel like at times it maybe doesn't feel like a vampire book because of that, but I think the reason this works well as a vampire book is the same way Dracula works well as a vampire book, and similar to what I said about Hungerstone. I think the thing that works so well with them is the vampire isn't necessarily present on the page, but you have that almost like background feeling of threat of them being there. So even though physically they're not there, they are there, and there's always the concern of them being there. Although literally Dracula as a character isn't actually present in the book until like right at the end. He is there the whole time, even though we don't see him, we don't speak to him, he's there the whole time just as a threat of what he might do, and I think that works very well. I'm saying that because I saw some reviews saying like they didn't think it worked very well as a vampire novel, and I would completely disagree on those points because of how well it fits with those more classic interpretations of vampires, and also like the characterization of Dracula. Like I said, some reviews were saying like this is just stupid and it doesn't make sense and just seems really silly. I think that is his character. In Dracula, he's throwing mirrors out the window very dramatically. He's climbing up and down walls in his lizard fashion and just doing silly little things to be a nuisance. That is who Dracula is. If he wants to go after historians for this reason, fine. I know you're not supposed to like Dracula as a character. I know he's supposed to be awful and terrible and whatever. I love him. I can't help it. He's just a dramatic, silly guy, and this captured it perfectly. If Dracula kidnapped me and was like, all I want you to do is catalogue my library. You can read whatever you want in there, but I just need you to catalogue it and then go and find some other books for me, like really old books, so I can keep adding to my library. Maybe make a few other vampires as well along the way. I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great, actually. I don't understand the response of the characters in this book to be like, we must kill him. Don't understand, because that sounds wonderful to me. I would happily do that. This has very easily become a favourite for me. There were bits that were funny, even if they weren't supposed to be funny. There was just the nice, different collection of characters coming together. Characterization of Dracula was great. There was so much history in it. I really, really enjoyed it. If you don't particularly want something that's very long, quite slow, and you don't really like history, this probably isn't for you. But this was everything I was hoping it would be and more. That's everything I've read this month though. All of my vampire books for this month. I think that was a good selection there. Some really didn't enjoy, kind of didn't remember very well, didn't leave me with much, and some that I absolutely love. As always, I'd be really interested to know your opinions on these books if you've read them, and again, if you have any good vampire recommendations for me, please do let me know. But that is all from me today, so I hope whatever you are, you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.